Hey, welcome to the Wally Bressler Show. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm Wally Bressler. I'm super excited to have you join us today. And I'm really excited about my guest here today. If you're really looking how to become the absolute best leader you can and to get some of the inside strategies on how to really become an amazing leader, whether you are an entrepreneur or the head of a sales department or a CEO or anything like this, and you're going to want to go ahead and listen closely to what my guest today has to say. Welcome, JM Ryerson. How are you today?
Brother, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me. And you know what I love about what's happening, because I know this is a newer system and you're trying something new, you're putting it into action. And this is one of the things that's my favorite thing about leadership, about sales, is just actually putting yourself out there. So kudos to you,
Thank
man.
you,
You practice what you preach, brother, and I love
Thank you,
it.
sir. That's awesome. People always ask me, what's the difference between a successful salesperson and an unsuccessful salesperson? It really comes down to speed implementation. So I agree 100% with you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our guest here. Well-traveled, very experienced gentleman. He's an entrepreneur. He's been building companies and leading sales teams for over 20 years. He's a co-founder and CEO of Let's Go Win. He's also a mindset and business coach and international speaker. He's the host of the Let's Go Win podcast, which is what, Wednesdays at 3 o'clock, correct?
Yeah, we have Tuesdays at that time, and then we also have another show that goes. But yes,
Awesome. Yeah, we'll let him find out more about it later on. And then you also are a best-selling author of the book, Let's Go Win, The Keys to Living Your Best Life, which I think you've got a little treat for people at the end here. And you're also the author of Champions Daily Playbook. So your leadership development, business consulting, team building, life coaching, career development coaching, public speaking, and being an awesome husband and dad, right? That pretty much nails it?
Thanks, man. That sounds pretty damn good. I'll take it if that's it.
You're like, whoever that guy is, let me know who he is. I appreciate that. All right, so obviously I want to be prepared for our call today or our podcast today. I'm looking up and I see University of Groningen for a year in Netherlands. And I'm like, I mean, were you out of wooden clogs? People go Spain, they go to England, they go to France, you go to the Netherlands. So start off with that because that's pretty intriguing right there. Let's start there.
Yeah, so the University of Groningen, if I wrote my G.
Thank you.
I had blown out my knee for the third time playing basketball in college. Yep. And that was a big hit for me because I identified so much as an athlete. And I said, well, what now? And you know what it allowed me to do is I ended up going to study abroad. Now, the idea was to go study at an English-speaking country. However, my grades didn't necessarily, I guess, suffice for that. And so I ended up at University of Groningen in the Netherlands. But you know, what's crazy, brother, so I get there and it's supposed to be an English-speaking for psychology is what I studied there. And it wasn't set up properly. So I ended up basically traveling around Europe the majority of my time there. And every credit I did get transferred back somehow. So in a matter of 4 years, 3 schools, I got 2 degrees, and I'm not entirely sure how that all worked out, but I had a great time.
And Montana's a Grizzlies, correct?
Yes, sir. You nailed it.
I went to school with a guy. His name was Drew Kleiber. He was from Montana, but he played football with me. I played football in college, but he was from Montana. Loved it. And we actually watched a couple of Grizzly games on TV, so it was fun. Let's get right into putting some meat on the bone here for some people. So your specialty is working with leaders, helping them with either becoming a leader or becoming an even better version of themselves. And you talk really a lot about the mental, psychological, and emotional side of what it takes to be a great leader, because there's all kinds of tactical stuff that people can do, but really what's going on in here and in here is ultimately what's going to determine how great of a leader you are, I'd agree. So 2-part question here. Number one, what is your definition of leadership? Let's start with that.
I stole it from John Maxwell, and it's just leadership is influence. I mean, I think it was such a simple, easy idea. And I think it's so true. It's like, look, if you have a bunch of people that you're influencing, you're being a leader. But if you're walking all alone, you're on a lonely walk. And so that's really my definition. My philosophy is it's not about you. And that's the one that I really teach to a lot of my clients.
Awesome. What made you want to get into coaching leaders and helping people just become the best version of themselves as they can, and to go ahead and be somebody who can, like you said, influence and direct people to create better lives for themselves as well? What kind of made you get into that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, man, because honestly, I started out just in sales and I love sales. I'm pretty decent at it, but I found that I really enjoyed leading teams and building teams and that team dynamic. And one of the things, Wally, that I think I knew early on, because growing up, like I said, I was an athlete in a lot of different ways. I played basketball in college, but it wasn't my best sport. My best sport was swimming. That was an individual sport, brother. And I don't like that, man. I like to be on a team and the camaraderie. And so I think early on I knew like teams is really where I excel. I enjoy that leadership part. I enjoy winning together and losing together. It's like no one's greater than the team. And so it happened pretty early in my career. I was fortunate to start a business with another business partner that his vision was only, really to have one office.
Right.
And I said, let's go nationwide. And he's like, why? So why not, brother? Let's just create teams in all these areas. And we did. And it was just such a cool ride.
Nice. Talk to me about your feelings about this, because one of the things I learned as I worked, and I'm still working on becoming an even better leader every day, but the difference of leading from the front and leading from behind. Sometimes we need to lead from the front, and sometimes we need to lead from behind, almost like a father with his family in front of him. So talk to me a little bit about your thought process and how you feel about those two different types of leadership and where they fit into your strategy, which we're going to mention in a little bit.
Well, one of the things I'll give you credit immediately is the way you said, look, I'm always improving. And guess what? If we ever think we've arrived as a leader, we're done. You're like, forget about it. If you think you have arrived at the pinnacle of leadership, you're already lost. So specific to your question, yeah, as a leader, you need to have self-awareness to when I do need to lead from the front, or it's time for me to step back, or it's time for me to really be that servant leader that is just there for our team, whatever they need. Times that I need to have those really challenging conversations. I need to have the courage to speak up and yet have the humility to know that it's not about me and to give credit and accolades to my team. So as a leader, it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are going on, but I think the more you can develop that self-awareness, the easier it becomes.
Awesome. I love that. So I got your book, Let's Go Win, the Keys to Living Your Best Life. And right out of the get-go, even in the introduction, I really love what you had to say about, hey, listen, I was nobody special. I didn't accomplish anything crazy. I haven't set any world records. I've really learned and worked hard over life. But one of the things you said, this is actually one of my favorite statements as a coach, and oddly enough, you sparked like a very long post on social media from today. As a result of that, it says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So I'm interested in your philosophy of how that's impacted you as a person, as a father, as a leader, as a business owner. I think you've owned 4 businesses at this point in your life, right? So you've gone through all kinds of iterations where you're a leader, even in sports. Talk to me a little about how that's impacted your thought process and when you decided that, hey, listen, it's time for me to perk up and listen here. Because I think it's important. A lot of people get lessons throughout their entire life. My story is about the guy who got lots of lessons and ignored them until he absolutely couldn't ignore them anymore. So I'm really interested in, as you've grown as a leader in the different areas of your life, how has that belief system, how's that impacted you as the receiver and the giver?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. All of us that have been teenagers, we know exactly what this means. Our parents weren't that stupid. What do you know? They were actually pretty smart, but we just weren't ready to hear those lessons. We knew more than they did, right? And as a coach, what I've learned is I can't want it more than you. So let's say I'm coaching Wally in anything, and I'm saying, hey, Wally, I see your potential. I see this. But if I want it more than him, it will not work. And that's a hard thing for all coaches to grasp, especially you said you played football in college. So when your coach is grabbing your face mask, it's because he sees the potential that you have and you're not living up to it. But only you can choose and decide to do it. He can only guide you or, in that case, incentivize you. Whether you agree with ripping the face mask or the pat on the butt, whether you agree with either way, look, they're trying to figure out a way to get the most out of you. And so it is just true, brother. Like, there's 2 books I read every single year, and I probably will for the remainder that I'll be on this earth. One is Man's Search for Meaning, because
love that book. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Viktor Frankl, I love that book.
Well, brother, you didn't interrupt it. You added to it because I agree. And I read it every year because it hits me differently every single year. Think and Grow Rich. For a long time, I resisted how often I was going to listen or read it. And I committed to just read it once a year because it hits me different every single time. Mm-hmm. And so the reason it hits you different is because your lens has shifted. It's changed. You're not the same person you were a year ago or last week or certainly 10 years ago. So why wouldn't you go back to some of these really impactful things that have helped so many people? True. And I think that's a big part of all of us, just evolving and changing and maturing to know that, you know what? I am different than I was then. And maybe this lesson that I resisted so much is exactly what I should be doing now, and have the humility to say, that's all right. I didn't get it then, but now I do.
Right. And since you've read Think and Grow Rich a million times, obviously the poem at the end, I Asked for Life, that whole poem about I asked for life a penny. I love that poem. That's an amazing poem. But I think a lot of people have trouble with Think and Grow Rich because you're reading the entire book waiting for Napoleon Hill to give you the formula, right? You're reading the whole book. Oh, what is it? What is it? What is it? And it's all in all the stories and stuff like that. You've got to read it and you've got to be able to pull out of what he's saying from the story, because he's not saying, okay, first thing, most important step is you got to want it. And so if you're going to read that book, be committed to reading between the lines and writing down what's being said, because there is a very simple formula that he lays out. But a lot of people don't get through it the first time, like I didn't either, because first you got to want it, then you got to take action. You got to plan it, then you got to take action, then you got to do it. It's just, did you have the same challenge the first time you read it? Because that's what I was looking for.
It's funny, man. I would call myself really pragmatic. And so it was kind of that woo-woo idea. But what's funny about that, Wally, is this was just a man that took interviews from the most successful people at the time, back in the early to mid 20s, and he put it on paper. So there's nothing mystical about it. It's not woo-woo. These are literally factual conversations. Now, he wrote another one, what's something with the devil? And I just recently,
I know talking about the devil.
How to outwit the devil.
Yeah.
So that one's a little different, where I could see people saying, wow, that's really out there, because he's literally having a conversation with the devil. But the truth is, he was just sharing information. So it's funny how whatever we're really resisting, sometimes it's exactly what you need to just surrender to and say, you know what, there's some validity here. Even if you don't like the messenger, there's validity in what they're saying. So to answer your question, brother, yeah, the first time, I think it was just that for me. It was like, what? Think and grow rich. So I just think and grow. No, of course not. That's not even what he says.
Exactly.
But I think the title throws people for a loop.
I think so too. And you really got to read it and pay attention for sure. So one of the core messages in your leadership training and your coaching and whatnot is authenticity and vulnerability. And so lots of people have different definition of what authenticity is and what vulnerability is. And there's different levels of vulnerability, right? There's emotional vulnerability. There's just external vulnerability about who you are as a person. So I'm interested in what your definitions of those two are. And then how do they apply to people being the best leaders they possibly can?
Yeah, well, I learned it the hard way. You know, the first company and a half I grew, I wasn't really myself, right? I told you I'm a simple kid from Montana, and I was taught that boys don't cry. Well, A, that's terrible advice. B, it's just not true. And C, it's not authentic to who I was. Now, once I learned that, look, me, JM, it takes zero energy to be me, right? It takes a hell of a lot of energy to be someone else. And the analogy I always give, Wally, is I'm 6'5", brother. Doesn't take any time or energy or effort to be 6'5". It's just how God made me. But if I tried to be like 5'5", yeah, man, that takes a lot of energy, a lot of time. My back's completely out of alignment. Why? Just be 6'5".
Like that.
And once I learned that, brother, company 3 and now company 4, it's just so easy. Because now I can take all that energy that I was trying to be something else, and now I can apply it to exactly what I'm trying to grow in business.
So technically then authenticity requires vulnerability, right? Because you got to be willing to look at, talk about radical honesty and radical transparency, about getting radical. You got to be radically honest and radically transparent if you want to make change. But to be authentic, you've got to be vulnerable and accept the fact that, you know, you are who you are, and people are going to like you or they're not going to like you. It's out of your control, right? And if there's something about you want to change, you got to change it.
So true. And, you know, that statement, I use it often, radical transparency. Ray Dalio nailed it when he talked about it. It's like, look, man, it's an amazing, anybody that gives you that true raw feedback, it's a gift. And just tell them, thank you. Thank you so much for helping me grow and get better. Even if it hurts, man, because some of this feedback doesn't feel good. We want to be liked, but I think we all want to be happy and get better. So it's a cool idea if you can really just be you, because the truth is, like you said, it's none of your business what anybody else thinks about you. Can't change it. So why spend any energy on it?
Absolutely. Maslow, be independent of the good opinion of other people. It's a good one. So I just want to dig in a little further on the vulnerability, because I think people don't realize what true vulnerability is. And from your perspective, I'm just interested in your perspective as leaders. Is it so I can relate better to people? Is it so that I can get feedback and become a better leader? Is it, being willing to go and talk to somebody about something that may be touchy, but that they need to be talked to? I mean, what is, talk about vulnerability as a leader and what you see and where you see they need to be vulnerable, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really comes in just how you're showing up. So again, of course, I built was called Show Up As You. It's literally, so if you and I needed to have a hard conversation, the poor leader was just like, Wally, you're doing great, pats you on the back, keeps going, and then fires you 2 weeks later because they're not willing to have the challenging conversation. That's not being vulnerable. Putting yourself out there and to say, Wally, I see we're not performing. And then you seek to understand what's going on. And then you find out, hey, guess what? Wally's got a sick mom that he's taking care of, or some other hardship going on at home. If you just approach it that way, if you're genuinely caring and being authentic with another human being, because all it is connecting heart to heart with another person, because we're all energetic beings. So if you're willing to have that conversation, that's vulnerability. Nice. If you're not, and you're sugarcoating everything, you're not helping anyone. And so I think while it's just getting back to the simplicity, which is, hey, you're a guy, I'm a guy, you're a gal, like we're just human beings. Let's just be, man. Let's not try to outsmart one another. Let's just have a conversation, a real conversation, so that we can get to where we're trying to get to together. Right. And then, guess what? If it doesn't work, if Wally's like, you know what, JM, I don't like you. You kind of suck. Cool, man. Maybe this isn't the spot for you, or maybe there's another person that would be a better leader for you. Let me see what I can do.
Great. So JM, you've probably worked with tens of thousands of people over the last 2 decades, tens of thousands all over the United States, to Canada probably too. I work with people, entrepreneurs, self-employed people, salespeople who help people overcome sales call reluctance. And so one cause of sales call reluctance is imposter syndrome. And from the research I've done, there are a number of leaders, CEOs, sales leaders, middle management people who suffer from a tremendous amount of imposter syndrome, which basically, for the folks who don't know what it is, it's basically, even though you're working hard and leading and doing a good job, you just don't think you are doing a good job, and that you're worthy, and that you're literally an imposter, that you're not who you say you are, and that people don't believe who you say you are, which is super counterproductive, because eventually it catches up with people and it really undermines them. So do you run into a lot of imposter syndrome in the people you work with, and how do you handle it with them?
Oh, brother, for sure. And if anybody says they haven't felt it before, in my opinion, they're not being honest with themselves. First time I wrote my book, I asked the question, who am I? I literally put it in the chapter. Like you said, who am I to be writing this book? Is it the right time? And this is what I tell people if they're ever speaking on stage and they get nervous. I said, stop thinking about yourself. Start thinking about your audience, and then you get better at it. Because when you're thinking about you, that's when you're getting in your own head about what to say. How do I look? Am I saying the right thing? Am I the right person? If I put all my focus on that person that I'm calling and the intention of why I'm calling, if I truly believe in my product, the only thing that would be reluctant is if I'm deciding to be selfish. Right. And it's amazing, brother. I've had people in the beginning, I'll work with them to like name their ego so they're clear on what it is. Typically, I don't have to go that far, but it's just stop being selfish. Really, what is your intent? And let's go help some people.
And honestly, and I think you'd agree with this, if you're going to be a great leader, you've got to get out of your own way. You got to get out of your head. You can't be your own worst enemy. Otherwise, you're going to undermine your efforts, and you're not going to be authentic, and you're not going to have credibility and authority with people. So I agree 100%. So you've got 2 hallmark programs, strategies for your organization. One is the Let's Go Win process, and the other is the Show Up As You Are system. Can you talk about both of those and how you apply them to clients' lives and businesses?
Sure. Well, the Show Up As You, we kind of briefly spoke about, and that the whole idea is just really being able to be your authentic self, both in business, in your personal relationships. And this is all the stuff that I had to learn the hard way. I was almost divorced with my amazing wife now. I almost lost my family because I wasn't being my authentic self. So that's what the Show Up As You program. In terms of Let's Go Win, it's just an overall philosophy of life.
How do you get people to check in with themselves to make sure they're being authentic? I think once you decide to be authentic, and because I think part of it's emotional intelligence, right? A high level of emotional intelligence lets you be as authentic as possible, because then you're really thinking about how I'm interacting with people and whatnot. But what's your strategy for people who are worried that they're not being authentic at a specific time? How do they check in? How do they make sure that their authenticity is where it needs to be?
Yeah, I have my clients ask a lot of questions in terms of, am I fulfilled in my relationship? Am I succeeding in business? How is my relationship with my health? And typically, what you'll find if we're not being authentic is those things aren't going well. And so we ask some basic questions. Why do I think this way, or why am I feeling this way? Is it true? And how's that showing up in my life? And let's just say for relationships, because I see this so often when people are struggling with their kids in a relationship or maybe with their spouse, I'll ask them, well, tell me what's going on. And ultimately, they're going to play the victim game about how he or she did this to them and how that made them feel. And this is the one my clients really don't like to hear, but no one has the power to make you feel any certain way. Only you do. And once you accept that, when you take full responsibility for your actions, now we have a real chance at having a rewarding, fulfilling relationship. We also have a real chance at true authenticity and vulnerability, and that all leads to fulfilling relationships. So it's all about asking questions, brother, and just being honest with yourself.
Nice.
Feedback, the other thing we talked about, I have my clients ask for feedback on a regular basis about every quarter,
Right.
so that they really know how they're showing up, because our lens isn't always telling us how we're showing up in the right
Not
way.
not even close, right? I see you just became a sales leader at Keller Williams in your area.
I did, man. Yeah,
I mean, that's on my reticular activator. I've been in real estate business for just under half my life. So I'm intrigued by that move. And when did you get your license?
I don't have my
Oh,
license.
so you're doing
That's the
training.
fun.
So you're basically over there helping people with their sales skills then.
So I'm helping build a team. I was so attracted to the growth mindset of this company that I decided, you know what? I can learn a lot here. I think I can bring some value to this company. They can bring a lot of value to me. And it's been a trip. It's really grinding again. I'm really having a good time with coaching these.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm certain they're lucky to have you. You know, real estate is a tough industry. I was having this conversation on a training I was doing earlier today. There's no AAA team. There's no farm team for real estate. There's no, hey, I'm going to move up from here to here. It's you get in, and even if you did life insurance sales or car sales, it's still its own animal. So there's lots and lots of things and skill sets and strategies and belief systems and approaches you need to internalize to become super successful. So fortunately, with your guidance, you'll be able to collapse time for these folks and help them get better results in a shorter period of time.
I'm hoping so. It's been fun so far. Really setting a lot of foundation for expansive growth and exponential growth. But it's only 6 months in, man. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, look, it takes 90 to 120 days to start seeing the results of any effort in real estate anyway. So you're probably people just starting to bear fruit from the things you're working on anyway, especially with the holidays. So good for you. I wish you luck with that.
Thank you, brother.
So you have your website, letsgowin.com. And you also have your podcast, which is Let's Go Win. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a bunch of other streaming services, I believe, including Amazon Music, correct? I did my research. I paid attention. Your gift today is they can get a copy of your Amazon best-selling book, Let's Go Win, The Keys to Living Your Best Life, which I got and I'm enjoying. And I will go and give you a 5-star review when I'm done with it. And they can get that by texting 66866 for a free copy of the book, right? So you text winning, not Charlie Sheen winning, but winning to 66866 for a free copy of the book. Anywhere else they can find you? You can be speaking anywhere in the Florida area, around the country, where somebody can find you or anything like that?
I have a bunch of virtual talks coming up, so I don't have any in person.
Where can they find those and see those?
You mentioned the Let's Go Win podcast, and Wally, I'm not sure because I don't do the scheduling, but I'm guessing you'll be on there, which obviously I have people follow.
My understanding, yeah, thanks, yep. That's mine too, yeah.
So you know what I would ask, brother? If people heard value in what I said today, the biggest gift I could receive is somebody to go to Let's Go Win podcast and just share it, subscribe and share. As you know, that's how we grow these things. And there will be a day, Wally, when all I do is podcast. That's how much I love this. This is my favorite format. So my goal of my podcast is to educate and to inspire. And I'd like people to tell something significant, like you to share something significant you overcame in your life
that shaped who you are today, and how it's helped you become a better dad, a better business person, a better person. So if you can share that, I'd love to hear that.
Man, there's a few of them. So I lost my dad in March of this year in a very significant, shocking way. You know, I gained a level of perspective that no one wants to lose someone that close to them. I mean, he was my best friend. He was an amazing human being. But I'm so grateful because of the perspective that I have because of it. So that's something. Told you about the knee injury. That was a big deal as an athlete. You know what? I'll share this because my dad was a part of it. I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car right out of college. And when I first decided to become an entrepreneur, I went into, you mentioned life insurance sales. That's what I ended up going into. And so I remember calling my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, I've got a new job." And he's like, "Oh, that's awesome, son. Tell me about the salary." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's none of that, Dad." And he's like, "Okay. Well, tell me about the benefits. They must be amazing." I'm like, "No, they don't have any of that either, Dad." And my dad did not cuss. And he's like, "What the F are you doing?" And it was the best decision I've ever made. And I'm so glad that I defied both he and my mom on this because, you know, parents, they want to take care of their kids. They want to make sure they're safe. And both my parents worked 35 years at one company for my dad and 39, my mom as a teacher. And it scared the living daylights out of them that I'm taking on this 1099.
Right.
And it literally, brother, I can't imagine going back and doing anything other than what I did, which was build 3 companies in the financial service world. And now Let's Go Win. And as you mentioned, Keller Williams now. So it was a really defining moment. And I was telling my decision maker, my dad, "Yeah, I know you don't agree with this, but this is what I have to do."
Love it. Awesome. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
I would say letsgowin.com or Let's Go Win 365 on any social media platform.
Oh, cool.
And you will actually talk to me. If it's not, it'll be my teammate that'll make sure I get it. And I would love to, brother. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. Anything else you want to add before we let you go for the day?
I would just say to anyone, just like we started the show with, go, if you're sitting on the side of the wall, just act, put yourself out there, go get it, because life is too short not to. And listening to you, brother, I love the insight that you have, and you're bringing so much value. So I just tell all your listeners, listen to what Wally's saying and go.
Well, then listen to what JM says. I'll return the favor because obviously you're doing this for 20 years. You've clearly done some good stuff. All right, folks. That right there is the incredible JM Ryerson. I'm Wally Bressler, and this has been the Wally Bressler Show. Take care and be kind to yourself.